Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Allison and Katie's Animated Adventures. I'm Katie.
I'm Allison.
And today we're going to be talking about a beautifully animated movie, and it's called Wolf Children. It's about this college woman. I was going to call her a girl, but she's not really a girl. A college woman who meets this mysterious guy that she sees in only one class, and there's nothing really about him that's outwardly outstanding. He's just kind of there almost, but it kind of like intrigues her. And spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't watched the movie, it comes as their relationship gets more serious. She finds out that he's a werewolf essentially, or a wolf shifter. I mean, I think that's like he can transform into a wolf. And even with his transformation, she still wants to pursue a relationship with him, which is great. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. It feels very believable, their relationship. She has 2 children with him, a girl, Yuki, and a boy, Ame. And he goes out and doesn't come back for 3 days, 4 days. They don't give an exact day, time span, but it's a long enough time span where she starts to get worried. And she finds him in his wolf form with animal control.
Yeah, which is so tragic.
It's very tragic. It's heartbreakingly tragic. Every time I see the scene, my heart breaks for her because all they see is a wolf.
Yeah.
They don't see a man. She knows, and she's devastated. And even when she goes up to the men who are disposing of the body, which is just awful, and she breaks down in front of them, and they don't know what to do, and they don't know the reason why, and it just is so. It just makes the whole situation so much more awful and worse. And all he was doing was trying to provide for his family.
Yeah, and she can't even explain to anyone why, she's so upset, or she can't say, can you, she can't bury him herself because what could she say? Give me that wolf.
Right.
She can't. And it's just, that's, they show later in the movie, all she has left of him is his ID card.
Yeah.
And it is so tragic.
It is. It's so tragic. And she goes into a depression, which, it's rightfully so. I mean, this was her husband, as far as we know, the love of her life, and he's been tragically and violently taken from her.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's no sense of closure.
Oh,
because
no.
how would there be?
Right, absolutely. And now she's a single mother with 2 children who also transform into wolves, who aren't like normal children. I think what exemplifies this is when Yuki accidentally gets into cleaning supplies or something, the I think it's the silicone gel packet, and she eats it, and she suddenly she's transformed into a wolf, and she takes her and Ame out of the apartment building, and she's there's the pediatrician's office, and then there's a veterinary clinic, and she's where do I go? She has no one to guide her now.
Yeah.
And that was oh. And coming from a single parent household too, it's it just hits home what my own mom was going through. Granted, it was just me. She didn't have another child. But even that's stressful and anxiety inducing, because she couldn't. I don't know what Hana was doing for work.
Yeah, I don't know if they.
Yeah, they didn't show that. But my mom, when I was ill, luckily we had somebody to watch me for essentially free. I wasn't put into daycare or anything like that. My mom couldn't stay home. She had to go to work. And I think that placed a lot of guilt on my mom as well. But it's that whole thing where it's what do I do? Where do I go?
Yeah.
Who can help me?
Yeah, I think they did a really good job at portraying like the feelings of like isolation and
yeah,
not only, you know, she really has no one that she can talk to about it, to share the experience with, because she can't place the children at risk,
right,
and she doesn't really know anything about, you know, them growing up as wolves.
Right.
It's not something she really talked about.
Right.
I don't remember what her husband's name was.
We don't know his name.
Oh, they don't say his name?
He doesn't have a name.
Oh, okay. So that explains it then.
Yeah.
I don't know it.
He never told her his name. At least we as an audience don't know what his name is.
So he is a mystery.
Yeah.
Completely. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that, I mean, is fitting. But it's like, you know, obviously a lot of the feelings of isolation come from them being wolf children, but also like you can take it as, and you know, she's a single mother now and she doesn't have a support system. And
yeah, and because now she's running into all of these problems with living in a city with children who do transform. I mean, they transform, so their children, their transformations, they can't help their transformations, and so when they howl, it's like, okay, people think now she's got a dog, and then it's the complaints, and then so that leads her, like, that encompassed with wanting to protect her children, she then moves out to the country, into a very, now not only is she isolated within herself, but now she's isolating herself outside in the actual world, because the place that she bought, most likely sight unseen, she has no idea what it looks like. It's, for lack of a better term, a dump, because it's been neglected, it's falling apart, places are rotting away, but and she's essentially out in the woods.
It is interesting though to think of like the comparison between like the two places they lived. Like in the city where you're in such close proximity to people, she was ultimately more isolated than when they moved to the countryside, where it is really, you know, there's not that many people. She doesn't have like direct neighbors. She has a lot of space, but ultimately that's where she does find a more supportive community.
Yes.
And they don't obviously understand everything because they don't know that they're wolf children, but she still finds, you know, they help her farm.
Mm-hmm. I love the gruff old man who comes across as not liking anybody, but sees her tenacity and like, because he only sees her as like a city folk trying to be like a country folk, but then seeing her tenacity and wanting to live as everyone else does out in the country, then I guess he kind of like starts to warm up to her.
Yeah. I thought there was going to be more about him. I thought for some reason that he was going to be the husband's like father or something. Like, I don't know.
No.
Like, I don't know. So I thought he, like, at some point it was going to be revealed that he
knew something.
Yeah, like knew something and like would be that like helpful person to help, you know, explain to her how to raise wolf children. Obviously, that's not what ended up happening.
Just a crotchety old man.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah,
but like I guess I was just surprised. I really thought throughout the movie that at some point there would be a character introduced that was the same as them, but they're really. Like, I don't even know if that wolf in the conservation
reserve.
I don't even know if that ended up actually being a wolf person.
It's Ame kind of like says it. It's like he used to be like them, but then being in captivity and having to stay in his wolf form kind of reverted him into just a plain wolf. But then that wolf kind of like becomes his mentor, more for Ame than for Yuki. I think, like, and I find that whole dynamic between siblings to be very fascinating as well. It's like in the beginning, Yuki enjoyed transforming, enjoyed being her wolf self, whereas Ame didn't like it at all. Like, it kind of like frightened him. And then as Yuki got older, started making friends and like crushing on boys, it became a thing. It became almost like a hindrance to her, and she didn't want to transform. And Ame completely went in the opposite direction, wanting to transform, wanting to live out in the wild as a full wolf, and like going off on his own, and Yuki at the end of the movie went off on her own as well. But so like the movie is essentially a story about family, about raising children, watching your child grow up, and then watching them leave, and like, you know, the heartbreak of having them leave and like go on with their own lives and stuff like that, and being independent from the parent. It's sad too, because Hana like put her life into raising her children, and that I think mostly stems from the trauma of losing her husband as she did, and not wanting to lose her children the way she had lost her husband. But then it's also like her self-awareness enough to realize that Ame has grown up, knows what he's doing, and knows what it means to live the way he wants to live. And then the howl he gives her at the end to say that, you know, he's gonna be all right. It was like, I'm getting emotional just thinking about it. It's it's a definite bittersweet moment.
Yeah, and I felt pretty bitter.
No. Oh no.
Well, see, I understood all of it, and I liked that. Hana ending up alone at the end really broke my heart. Even though it says, like, the narration, or like Yuki's narration says something like she's alone, but like she's content. But it just felt so depressing. Yeah. It was like, obviously a big theme of the film is like isolation. Yes. And because either accepting it or...
Right. I feel like if you looked at it this way, it's like when Hana was in the city, even before she met her husband, she wasn't really interacting with anybody around her. Like it wasn't indicated that if she had any friends. It didn't indicate if she, you know, hung out with anybody. So like, it's almost like when you're in the city, you're surrounded by people, and yet you can still feel isolated. Yeah. But when you go out to the country, it's like you're isolated environmentally, but then people naturally gravitate towards people to like help people out and all that stuff. I mean, even with like the really bad rainstorm that they had gotten, like the severe like thunder and storm that they had gotten, there was threats of like landslides and stuff like that. The entire community helped each other out through that. And if you're in the city, you don't worry about landslides, and you don't worry about like natural disasters like that, and so people kind of like just go about their business. So yeah, I don't know where my thought was going with that, but it's like that duality, I guess.
Yeah, like I did like. It is like a beautiful story.
So like to your point of Hana being alone, she's not really alone, because she has now a community and friends, and though her children are off doing their thing, it's not like Yuki doesn't go back home on holidays and stuff, and you know, it's
see, because I guess I just didn't like that it's like, you know, Ame can go do his thing in the woods. Right. But, like, because it seems like they're saying goodbye forever, it's like, but he's just going to be up in the mountains. Yeah. Can he never come visit her? Well, I was reading about it, and, like, one person, and maybe this isn't true, said that in the manga, I just either implied or that he does visit her. Yeah. So that made me feel a little bit better.
I didn't read the manga. Well, no, I did read the manga. Oh. I had the hardcover book.
So you'll have to let me know.
Yeah, I don't have the book. I don't have it anymore, and I got rid of it, and I wish I didn't. I can always get it again, but yeah, I think the manga. Now I don't remember. Because I got it after I saw the movie, and I read it, and there isn't that much of a difference between the manga and the movie itself.
Yeah, maybe it's just implied or something. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, but I hope it's true. It'll make me like it a little bit more, I think.
I think because the ending is so ambiguous, you can infer what you want with it. Yeah. I like to think that just because they say goodbye. I think it's more that they're saying goodbye to their childhood and to the protection that they needed from their mom, from Hana, and embracing what they would consider to be their adulthood.
Yeah.
And that, you know, even though they're going their separate ways, that's not to say that they don't come back and you know, be a family together.
Yeah. I just don't like open endings. I like to know, you know, exactly what's going on there.
So, obviously, I've seen this movie multiple times. I love this movie. I think it's a beautifully animated movie. But coming from somebody, you kind of touched on it a little bit, from somebody who never saw the movie before, what did you think of it? What were your expectations of it? Were your expectations disappointing throughout the movie, or what did you first think of what was going to happen? Like, were you surprised by the twist, as it were, of Hana's husband dying? I mean, like, was it?
Yeah. So, I mean, overall, I'd say I definitely enjoyed it. And because, like, going in, like, I knew that it was going to be sad.
Yeah.
So, like, I knew sad things were going to happen. So, like, I wouldn't say, like, anything really, like, surprised me at all. Even though it's still disappointing when it's like, oh, the tragedy that you expect to see, you know, that is what ended up happening. But I wouldn't say I was, like, disappointed at all in, like, anything.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, I really liked, like, the music. Like, and then the parts where, like, there wasn't music or there was just silence, like, I felt like they hit hard as they should have.
Absolutely.
And I was actually, I guess one thing that surprised me is I did think that Hana died at first in the woods when she was seeing her husband. I was like, oh, she's dead. Which, I mean, that's kind of, you know, she's speaking to her dead husband.
Right.
In the same place where, like, you know, when she, like, sees him after he died for the last time. So that kind of gives you the vibe.
Yeah. I mean, it could be that she was close to it and he kind of, like, pulled her out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, like, whether or not he was actually there. It's like, you know, she got what she needed from that interaction. That her kids know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And to let them
go
do what they need to do.
Yeah, essentially. It's all about, I think, like, just letting go and forgiving yourself and forgiving others for what I think Hana felt as abandonment, but it wasn't really abandonment. Like, it wasn't his fault that he was working on instincts to provide for his family that ended up getting him killed, and leaving her with 2 children to raise on her own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's like, even still, like, knowing all that, I just still feel like it's just, and obviously it's like a bittersweet ending for a reason. Like, you're not going to feel, like, completely satisfied by what's happening. But I just think it's just sad.
Yeah.
You know, the last scene of her sitting by herself in the house, whether or not she's satisfied.
Yeah.
To me, it just felt
like you got gypped.
A little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how to explain it, but it's like, you know, her daughter's moved away to boarding school and her son maybe isn't going to ever come see her again.
Yeah.
And it's just sad. You know, because she spent like 12 years of her life dedicated to them.
Yeah.
Even if, you know, she didn't have much of a life going on in the city, she uprooted her whole life.
Right.
That she had established there, you know, to go make continuous sacrifices for them.
Yeah.
And I guess, like, the whole thing is, like, unselfish love, and that, you know, she did all of that for them and let them go. But still, like...
Yeah, I understand that, but I think that's also, like, the story is trying to say, you know, parents make these sacrifices all the time, and they do it selflessly, they do it because they want to, not because they have to, and it would behoove us as children not to appreciate our parents more for what they've done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then I guess just like, because to me, like, appreciating your parents wouldn't be leaving and never visiting them again.
Right.
So I guess that's just why it feels strange to me.
Right. And I think because we live in a completely different culture, and I don't know Japanese societal norms as well as I do our own. I'm not well versed in their societal culture and stuff like that. More of their history culture I can get, I know a little bit more about. So it could be that. It could be that because I know that Japanese children are far more independent when they're at a much younger age than we are as a society. So it could not be, what am I trying to say? It could be just the normalcy for a Japanese child to go to to live in a dorm in middle school and not think twice about not going home until a holiday break.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Like, oh, this is one thing that did bother me. Well, I mean, this part didn't bother me, but I did think Sohei was going to turn out to be a wolf as well. Because why is he so good at, like, smelling things and then, like, nothing comes from that?
I don't know. I think that's just, like, him. I think that's just him.
Yeah, but it kind of, like, I felt like set it up.
Yeah.
Like, that's what you would think.
Right.
And then it's like, oh, it's just...
I think it was more to set up Yuki to reveal her true self.
Yeah.
To him and have him not be afraid of her or judge her or, you know, just to, like, accept her as who she is. And I think that's also, too, about, like, the whole story of this movie is accepting who you are as well and not being afraid to show who you are, because you are who you are.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I think that's what the movie was trying to show as well. Cause
yeah,
like,
and I think they accomplished that.
Yeah.
And then what did bother me then was, you know, when she's trying to get away from him because because he could smell, you know, he asked if she had dogs at home, and it made her very uncomfortable that he's, like, noticing something about her that she doesn't want anyone to notice.
Right.
And he won't leave her alone.
Right.
And then he's, like, grabbing her and won't let her go. And that's why he gets hurt.
Right.
But it was just like, oh my God, just leave her alone. Just let her go. Like,
that
also bothered me.
Boys in middle school, or just kids in general in middle school, are like that, though. It's like they haven't learned boundaries yet. But I think, though, like, not to mitigate him being insistent on knowing what's going on with Yuki and not respecting her boundaries, but he does say that it was his fault.
Yeah, well, that's, like, when it was like, all right, like, at least he's self-aware.
Yeah.
And then, like, you do learn later that he's like, oh, he's always known. Yeah. Because he did see what happened when she transformed and hit him. Right. And, you know, when he's younger, he says, like, oh, like, it wasn't Yuki, it was a wolf, but, like, it wasn't, you know. Right. Obviously, he did think he knew what happened. Right. And he just let her go on until she decided to tell him, so she could tell him at her own pace. Right. He covered for her. Yeah. And not reveal her secret to anyone else. Yeah. So I do think he was redeemed. Yes. But it just irritated me at the time that it was her life was falling apart at school because he wouldn't leave her alone, essentially. Right. And that was like... Right. Yeah, it'd be like that, though. I think that's that whole experience, I think, is not what, oh, God, words, is not is experienced everywhere. It's not
The word is just not coming to me. Yeah, you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Well, they pulled it together, though.
They
I guess I just don't like the trope of, like, oh, crush on a girl, so they're gonna, like, harass you.
Yeah.
You know, like, I just didn't necessarily like that. But then I feel like after that, their relationship was nice to see because then he, you know, would come to their house and just, like, leave her things because he wanted her to come back to school, and he felt bad. I'm sure he, like you said, it was his fault what happened. So, like, after that, I was like, okay, you know, he's not that bad. Yeah.
He's redeemed yourself in your eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'd say, like, those are the only things that, like, I didn't like about it.
But, and they're small things. It's not like it continued on.
Yeah. And, like, nothing that would have affected my overall enjoyment of it.
Right.
You know. And bittersweet endings, you're never, like, they're bittersweet for a reason.
They are. Yes. Yeah. So, I was looking online earlier to see if I could see any reviews. Rotten Tomatoes rated this movie 95%, and audience voted like a 92% on this movie, which I think is well deserved. It's a great movie. It's beautiful. I wouldn't even call it haunting. It's just it peers into a world that, although it is very like supernatural and like it's very much a paranormal story, fantastical story, but it's also rooted in some elements of reality, which I appreciate, because it doesn't take me out of the story. It really just sucks you in further. Yeah. And there's nothing about like any of the other like anime movies we have watched for our podcast, which if you haven't seen, you should go check it out. There are certain elements of it where it was so jarring that it took me out of the story. This just kept me more immersed.
Yeah. Then how, like, would you rank it if you had to rank it against, like, not even necessarily movies we've watched for this podcast, but other, like, Japanese animated movies that you have seen?
Oh, it's up there with, like, my favorite Ghibli movies. Like, it's definitely up there with Princess Mononoke, Spirited Away, Kiki's Delivery Service. It's anyone who asks me to recommend an anime movie that they haven't seen that they're interested in seeing, I would recommend this movie with the Ghibli movies for sure.
Would you rank it above them, or just like if you had to choose like a number one?
Oh, if I had to choose a number
would it be number one?
That's really hard. That's really hard. It would be tied with number one with my favorite Studio Ghibli movie, which is Princess Mononoke.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah. And another movie in like this vein is The Boy and the Beast. Another very good movie, which I think we should look at as well, talk about. It's not like it's again in like set in this. I'm getting a little off topic, but it's set in like a very fantastical world, and it's really very good.
I don't know if I'd rank it number one with other things like Spirited Away, which might be a favorite, or Howl's Moving Castle, but like it's definitely up there. Yeah, you know. Yeah. Top 10.
Hey, you know, if it's in your top 10, I feel very I feel very happy about that.
I'm just a harsh critic sometimes.
It's okay. You're allowed to be.
All right. I think that was
that's all I have about this movie. I love this movie. It's a great time. It's, you know, it makes you feel all the feels. And let us know if you've seen the movie. If you like it, please comment, like, subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time.